back, everyone, to Ask The Unfaithful. As always, I'm joined by my great friend and brilliant individual, James Anir. So, James, how are you today as we start today's podcast?
Brilliantly bright, anyway. Now that you've shown me how to adjust my lighting, I actually show up rather than look like a deep, dark Uncle Fester. So I am doing very, very well. And how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. Today, we're talking about a concept that you've done a phenomenal job in the notes discussing this from a different term that is not as well known as maybe the words craving or desire or high risk behavior or yellow circles or red circles. You've approached this today. It's one of my favorite descriptive words that you have implemented. And today's title, it's not necessarily a question, and I know that the trades are going to love this. And I hope that the unfaithful will grab hold of this and that a new word will challenge them to look at this from a new angle. And the title is this: Intrigue, the silent saboteur of healing and connection after infidelity. First, we have to define intrigue. So, James, what is intrigue?
So I'm just going to throw up a warning. This one is complex. So I've broken it down as best we can. So interrupt me whenever, Sam, so we can converse about it. Let's just go with the really basic definition, and that would be thoughts and boundary light behaviors and patterns of interaction that seek sexual and emotional hits from fantasies and other people. So that's the definition in a nutshell. Let's get into real people language. It's unconsciously being on this constant lookout, unconsciously and consciously seeking and actively pursuing this emotional buzz. And we do it in a lot of ways, but through things like noticing, just noticing, right? Searching, attention, flirtation, and energy exchange, eye contact, smiles, charged banter, intellectual conversation. I bring that one in because that used to be a really big pothole for me. And then that can build into these extensive narratives and visualizations that we have inside our heads, sometimes hours long. In that, they can become sexualized, eroticized, and or romanticized. And that then can lead to daydreaming, compulsive fantasizing, masturbation, and even obsessive thinking about the object of desire or intrigue, which could be a person, a body part, whatever we're going to obsess on within that. In any of this, of course, the other person is never seen as a real individual. They're reduced to an idealized fantasy object, which fuels even further obsession and disconnection from reality.
Like I said on the front end, fascinating stuff. But we have to ask ourselves, where does this come from? Where does the intrigue and the unconscious as well as conscious, where is it flowing from?
It can be so many different things just out in our environment. It could be a single casual encounter. That could be just a little bit of eye contact. It could be a smile, even from a worker just doing their job like a cashier, just the brief smile. But we can take it as so much more.
Yeah.
Or it's just enough to catch our attention. And then that goes on in our head as something much more than it was. And it's not necessarily about, oh, I'm going to go back and talk to that cashier or whatever, but it's just becoming this fantasy that's evolving in our head. Seeing someone on the aisle in a store. This happens a lot, like grocery stores, just seeing somebody and needing to go and take a look at them again. It could be an apparent flirtation from somebody, say like a waitress or waiter or something, and they flirt with you, or it seems like a flirtation, but really they're just trying to get a bigger tip. So much of the time, that apparent flirtation is a total misperception. It could be a thought, it could be a visual. These are big, like just a flash of color. For me, it could be motion, like a dress, a flowing dress, just moving past me. I wouldn't even have to see the person or anything else, or the color hair, or smells too. Smell is one of the major senses that can trigger us. It could be a hint of musculature. A female unfaithful sees a muscular guy, and it could just be a hint of it. Well, that person's well built. Most would normally look at it like that. But for this person, the unfaithful, boom, intrigue is like that. Or cleavage, or the hint of that. It could be a sound, like a laugh, just an attractive laugh. Oh, there's that joyous laugh. And that can set us going. We don't even have to see the person.
Now, this does not mean that an unfaithful, because a lot of betrayers are already thinking that way. This doesn't mean that the unfaithful per se is an addict.
Oh, did I say addict?
No, not at all. But
Okay.
a lot of these things are what is talked about for
Oh, yeah.
addicts who are like, oh my gosh, he or she's going to get triggered. But
Yeah.
you're not saying that this is addiction based.
No. I mean, it can be, obviously. For
Sure.
addicts, absolutely. But for anybody really who is not finding a sense of peace within themselves, or that their needs are not being met within themselves. So they've looked maybe for their partner to do those, but no other human being in the world can do that for
Right.
us. So then, we have our eyes out or in our thoughts, or we're throwing hooks to get some sort of high. It is a dopamine high, whether it's validation, that person smiled at me, that person likes me. I think it's really a very human thing, and yet it goes to a greater extent with those of us who have been unfaithful. The reason we're talking about this is because it is so dangerous. It's
Be-
such an insidious way this gets in.
because we can also unconsciously create emotional intensity, right? Or drama in relationships and really not be aware of what's happening.
Oh, yeah. We do this because it creates in us this need to soothe ourselves then. Things are going so crappy. We had such a bad argument, or we're just on each other all the time, or we feel like the expectations are so high. So we feel like we've got to go do something for ourselves, and maybe unconscious. But what we'll do is we'll go outside of the relationship then, because now we've got an excuse, whether we're conscious about it or not, because the tension or stress is so high. We're going to go out this way looking for something to help make us feel better, or to lessen our emotional stress or pain that we've created in the first place. That sort of unconscious creation of emotional intensity or drama can also create long term damage, because then we start to categorize our partner as a threat in that reactive part of our brain. So even thinking of them or anticipating an interaction with them becomes associated with fear, and that creates the need to avoid or escape. So I'm going home, and even though it's not based in any fact, we've created this association that then pushes us towards this intrigue, which, because it's a dopamine release, is going to make us feel a bit better. Not a lot, just those little bits. But those little
Yeah,
bits add up, man. It's not like, oh, I
absolutely.
just want to get this giant high. It's really about these little things that just keep us going through the day.
Now, talk about the validation piece.
Okay. Intrigue really seeks validation more than connection. We were just talking about those short term highs. So, this is a real danger as well. The more that we feel validated through intrigue, the more we're going to want those. And just getting those little tiny things that don't seem like much can make us feel okay. Small validations multiple times a day, just keep going. Kind of like chain smoking. Or I wish I had one here, but I've been munching on these little wintergreen lifesavers all day,
Right.
right? What is it doing? It's keeping my sugar level a bit high, which makes me feel a little more energized. Okay, so it's kind of like that. The problem is it's tunneling more and more into the intrigue. That then, if done enough and for long enough, can get to a place where it's insidiously spreading like this very fast metastasizing cancer.
You mentioned that intrigue is at some level an entryway into problematic behavior.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. This is not necessarily on a compulsive or addictive level. That was just sort of a warning that it can go there. What it can become very easily is habitual. What it can lead us to, though, is being manipulative, Intrigue itself can often become manipulative. We can consciously throw out those hooks to get that attention
Yes.
or get that flirtation. It's
Yeah.
fueled by this fantasy and validation. So the fantasy itself of, oh, that person smiled at me. Now I'm fantasizing, not necessarily on a sexual level. We're creating this fantasy, almost a relationship on a very low level that validates us all the time. So now all I have to do is think about that person smiling at me, and I feel good. I feel validated. It's not something I'm going to be thinking about that I'm going to consciously go, hey, I think I'll think about that and fantasize about that. Intrigue thus can become a major obstacle to recovery because what it's doing is it's keeping that focus on those external hits instead of relating to that person that I'm in relationship with. And so instead, I'm not relating on that relational recovery level at all. I'm blocked from that. Uh,
Yeah.
it also continues the objectification because, of course, it's never about who the person is. So that objectification just worsens it. It's breaking a human being down into somebody or something that serves us, kind of like a drug, right?
Absolutely. We're graciously trying to call it out so that unfaithful can recognize it and go, oh man,
Yes.
I need to do some work on this. And so the betrayed can actually understand why the unfaithful does the things that they do. So maybe this would be a good topic is how does it feel inside? What goes on internally when we're doing this?
I think it's a great place to go because we've pointed out what it is. Now, how does it feel inside so that the unfaithfuls who are watching this can go, oh, okay, now I can
Yeah.
do with that. So it starts off typically noticing someone or a certain look or a part like the flowing blonde hair or whatever. Then there's liking the feeling. I like that. Oh, that feels good. I want to look at that again. And then we might throw out a hook, like if that person's actually interacting with us or has given us a smile, we might smile back and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Or we might not be throwing out a hook, but we might start investigating, finding out more about the person, or looking at pictures of flowing blonde hair. So we're seeking out similar hits. And then we start feeding on the response, whether it's from that person or how many times we can find that picture of somebody with flowing blonde hair and it makes us feel good. But if we're getting feedback from the other person, that's going to be an ego boost. Either way, it's going to be soothing. We're going to feel better in the moment. But it's so
Yeah.
small, unlike the addictive behavior, we're not necessarily going to feel shame from getting that ego boost. This really doesn't seem like we're doing anything outside of what we normally do in life, which again is where it can be really problematic because it sneaks up on us.
Well, and it gets sticky, but it wouldn't get sticky if there wasn't a reason why it sticks. So why does it get sticky? Why does it stick?
Feels good, man. Right? It's that
Yeah.
feel good chemical rush of that adrenaline, that dopamine. Adrenaline energizes, dopamine is pleasure, right? So, wow, now it's sort of that, ooh, that feels really good. We feel a little bit amped. We feel happy. We feel content. We feel whatever we're getting from that. And then it broadens out from the need for validation, say, just as a, for instance, to medicate stress, shame, guilt, loneliness, inadequacy, even worthlessness. All of those negative feelings we now can medicate just by having a little bit of intrigue.
Yeah.
And the thing, though, is when we stop doing it, we're going to notice this. The anxiety is going to increase. I'm not saying it's going to be over the top panic, but there's going to be this withdrawal level anxiety because we're no longer getting the feel goods. That can happen when either we stop or the object of our attention or intrigue stops paying attention to us and the validation high drops. On a deeper level, there's this other cycle going on. We talked about that noticing and feeling good cycle, very superficial. The underlying cycle will continue to generate the desire for intrigue by possibly instilling guilt If we recognize that this isn't quite right, shouldn't be doing this, that would then go to justification, just to try to assuage maybe the resulting shame. So that would sound something like, I'm not really doing anything wrong here. It's just harmless attention. And then that would then gather a little bit of steam and go into anxiety, perhaps some sadness, and eventually that can grow into something that feels pretty intolerable. Even low levels of those feel intolerable to us. Think about it. We're always taking Tylenol or whatever for a headache. We don't like to feel any pain. So emotional pain's the same. And then rinse and repeat.
And we just kind of justify it time and time again. And then we wake up in 6 months, a year, and we are unfortunately deep into an affair. So now let's talk about what intrigue actually does to the unfaithful.
So, everybody has moments of intrigue here and there, curiosity almost. But when it gets to this level where it becomes repetitive, that is really a fantasy life that's fueled by the intrigue. And what that's going to do then is what we are just talking about, where we start justifying it, is where actually shame's coming into it. So this intrigue, then fantasy life, then starts to reinforce our shame and then our secrecy as well. At some point, this becomes something like, oh, I've got to hide this. It starts off almost innocently, almost like that's no big deal. This is why we have to be aware of it. Then we also get this thing that is really key to recognizing it too, a loss of time. When we're in these daydreams or these sexualized fantasies or romanticized fantasies, we could spend hours in those imagined scenarios and not even realize we're doing it. That can interestingly be in the presence of somebody else. We're not present. We could smile and nod. Maybe we're hearing some of it. But if we're off in that fantasy, guess what? We're disconnected. We are not actually present. That leads me to this deep disconnection. And I am not just talking about deep disconnection from our partner, I'm talking from life.
Yeah.
So this is where this can spiral into, because the object of intrigue is idealized, not known as a real person, like we said. And that projection then deepens disconnection from authentic relationships, and it feeds obsession. So we keep going and going more in that direction and farther away from real relationships.
Because there is a psychological effect that happens when we engage in this behavior time and time and time again.
So, like any habit, our brain is habitualized to that. So it trains our brain toward wanting the fantasy, toward looking for the fantasy. And it splits us off into states, basically validation over values. So honesty and presence feel even harder. These split off states take us away from who we really are. And it also reinforces a fantasy based identity, the masks that we wear. And that really comes from, if we take a step back and think about it, I feel confident only when I sense somebody else wants me. It also reinforces entitlement narratives. I deserve to feel good. My needs justify this, justify my actions. In doing that, it's numbing empathy and accountability.
And I want to throw out a qualifier, whether you're watching or whether you're listening or both, breathe.
Mhm.
Because this could be a bit unsettling for the betrayed to look at this and be like, you mean all of this is happening? Yes, it has been happening. If you are a betrayed spouse, this type of behavior has been happening. It doesn't mean that your unfaithful, male or female, is beyond repair or beyond personal restoration and even marital restoration. But we are taking a scalpel to explain how this all happens. And I'm positive that there's unfaithful that are probably sitting back going, I don't know that I've ever had somebody take a scalpel and really extrapolate out what I've been doing for maybe decades or maybe years, and I haven't even been aware of it. So, as we talk about this, it shows up in behavioral patterns. So, talk about the behavioral patterns that show up.
Secrecy, minimization, blame shifting, impatience with repair. Why can't you just get over this? Why is this continuing on? Boundaries that you may even mutually set, if you're not really down with it, and truly agreeing with the boundaries. If they're not done in a collaborative sense, then boundaries can feel like punishment. Any of those, if we find ourselves doing those, we need to look at, is intrigue somehow involved in this? Changing this stuff, really not so easy. So I'm going to tell you that I first learned about intrigue in SLAA, and I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, tell you a really quick story. My sponsor and I were sitting in this restaurant. I might have told this before, but it's worth retelling. I've been going to that restaurant for 15 years, and I knew the owner really quite well just from there. I'd never seen her outside of there, but we were having dinner, and they didn't serve dinner often for a reason because, nobody came, but we did. So she
Right.
comes over and she puts her hand on the back of the booth, and she's just chatting with me. And poor Scott's sitting over there like a bump on a log, right? I'm having this conversation with her. And then finally she says, okay, well, I'll let you guys eat your food. And she goes away, and Scott looks at me and goes, flirt much?
Mm,
And I was like, what are you talking about? That's so and so. I wasn't flirting. What are you talking about? He goes, yeah, I don't think you should come back to this restaurant for at least 6 months.
wow.
So, he really helped me with the perspective, right? As he would call it. I was like, okay, I'm going to follow his suggestions like they're rules. So I'm just saying that it can be so unnoticeable that it really takes a lot of effort to notice it. It also helps, that I had Scott right there pointing stuff out to me all the time. It's helpful to have somebody who is watching out for you. So change can stall in part because we don't recognize when we're in intrigue. It can also stall when our self protection or our defenses become rigid. Like if we have a low tolerance for discomfort, black and white thinking, negativity, isolation, all of those block growth. We have to be really aware of that stuff. So this is not an easy thing because it is so seemingly innocent.
Well, it's not easy. I don't know that we've made an easy podcast yet, but this is the information that we need if we're all going to heal unfaithful and betrayed, male or female, who's ever on the side of the unfaithful. They have to understand how this behavior works. Now, let's talk about what intrigue does to the betrayed partner.
Mhm. So this is really important because unfaithful is for you to understand that what we do, whether it's intrigue or other things that we've brought up, does to our partner. It can really help us anchor into our empathy that we need to develop so much. So here's a key part. Even if intrigue isn't known, so we don't recognize it or our partner doesn't recognize that it's happening, its escalation into fantasy and obsessive thinking is going to leak out as emotional unavailability. When that happens, a betrayed partner can often sense it as an absence, even though they don't have any idea yet, anyway, that it's happening, and long before knowing any specifics. Then, when it's eventually revealed, betrayal is going to feel compounded. Not only were they excluded from the reality of what's happening, but they were replaced by an imaginary rival who never actually existed. I broke this down into female and male. You might find that it applies to you regardless, but female betrayeds might think, so all those times you told me I was crazy for noticing your withdrawal, I was actually right. A male betrayed might think, so you were daydreaming about someone else while you were with me? Was I ever enough? They're also going to pick up on traumatic signals. They're going to be things like micro withdrawals, secrecy vibes, off energy, which would be felt as lost safety and attachment threat. Those are all things that a betrayed can pick up on unconsciously and just going, what is going on here? What's happening? Something's happening. Then once they finally get the intrigue piece of it, oh, entitlement messages can land as, so your buzz mattered more than my safety? And that's going to have a cascading impact because then there's going to be invalidation, gaslighting, perhaps. It's nothing, which is going to create confusion and self doubt. There could be even an emotional role reversal where the betrayed is actually then pushed to regulate the unfaithful's distress over this being discovered, right?
Yeah.
And that can then lead to a self-judgment loop, this fear of being judged or criticized or being made wrong. That could result in withdrawal from or even pursuit of the unfaithful, which could lead to shutdown. And all of that's going to amplify hopelessness.
And what we want to do is amplify hope. So wherever you are, whatever stage you're 6 months in or 6 years in. Today, we have extrapolated out some real hard hitting principles that really the unfaithful, we have to know this stuff. We have to study this stuff. When you were just dissecting it, I was like, yep, yep. Yep, I was thinking 25 years ago when I was caught in my behavior and had no idea what I was doing. And now we have been afforded the great, wonderful gift to be able to help those who are where we were. One of my favorite memes is when it talks about someone who's come out of darkness and they have a light and they're willing to go back into darkness to set other people free. So today we're highlighting so many of these points that are hard-hitting truths because we want to help you, the unfaithful, find freedom. We want to help you, the betrayed, find understanding. Because intrigue begins small with curiosity, validation, or even just attention, but it can escalate into fantasy, obsession, and then secrecy. And if you're watching this podcast, it probably already has. And there is help for you. But sometimes it starts as a spark of interest, right?
Yeah, which often becomes romanticized, sexualized, idealized, turning the other person into an object rather than a whole person.
For us unfaithful, intrigue fuels shame and secrecy and compulsive cycles that erode integrity and self respect. And so today, we are only as sick as our secrets. So today, we're bringing out the secrets to dissect them.
Yeah.
And for the betrayed partner, these takeaways are important as well.
Because even when they don't know that intrigue is happening, the effects are going to show up. And they'll show up as absence, invisibility, disconnection. Intrigue isn't harmless. It is a hidden process that undermines recovery before repair even begins.
I think it was Dan Siegel that says you have to name it to tame it.
Hmm.
If you don't name it, how can you tame it? So today we're naming it to be able to tame it because naming intrigue is the first step in weakening its power and moving towards honesty, integrity, healing, and what every betrayed wants, relational safety. Now, we're going to do a follow-up to this, James. So why don't you tee up the follow-up a little bit that's going to come their way soon?
And now we're going to look at how intrigue damages the relationship itself, how it sabotages recovery. We're going to deep dive into those and what it takes to stop it, heal the inner drivers, and help the betrayed heal.
I don't say this casually, but I really do feel in my gut that this is probably one of the most important episodes that we've done in terms of helping the unfaithful understand how it happens and why it happens. And I hope you, betrayed as well, have found this helpful to be able to understand what's been happening. They didn't just wake up one day and make sabotaging decisions. There have been things going on underneath the scenes for quite some time. We are incredibly grateful for so many of you who leave comments on our posts, who email in, who reach out looking for help. And we just want to affirm that we know what it's like to be lost looking for help. We are honored that you've spent this time with us today. Don't forget about Ask the Betrayed. That continually has new episodes coming out. You can find that on YouTube by just going into YouTube and searching for it. It's on the other podcasting platforms as well. Don't forget about this little dude, Sam's Healing Podcast. That's available for you to check out as well. But as we say goodbye today, we are just honored to help you and to support you. And as always, we'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.